peer-state competitors China and Russia in the periphery, along with an emboldened Iran. The looming threat posed by North Korea's long-range ballistic missiles has resulted in a frenzy of missile defense messaging that is often as wrong as it is in fashion. Emanating from the very tip-top of the America's government, the notion that missile interceptors are some sort of perfect panacea to ballistic missile-wielding foes, even rogue states with relatively limited resources, is a lie. And despite the inaccurate claims made by the president on down the line, these systems do offer some form of defense against limited, low-volume attacks, and the more advanced the enemy missile is, the less reliable American interceptors would likely be under real-world conditions. But as we enter into a new political environment where hawkish rhetoric is en vogue, the misunderstandings surrounding missile defense and its limitations are snowballing, and the mainstream media isn't innocent in this phenomenon either. Reuters published a highly circulated article about the possibility of installing a Terminal High Altitude Area Defense (THAAD) interceptor battery at a new site on America's west coast. Big problem here: THAAD isn't capable of defending the country against incoming ICBMs. It is a system developed to counter theater ballistic missiles. In other words, it is meant to swat down short to medium-range missiles, and at the high end of its envelope, intermediate-range ballistic missiles, not long-range, fast and high-flying ICBMs. The first test of THAAD against a simulated Icbm occurred just last July, and its developmental past had plenty of issues. Additionally, THAAD isn't capable of defending continent-sized areas like America's high-flying ground-based missile defense interceptors. THAAD batteries based on the west coast of the U.S. would be nearly useless as they are built to intercept less capable missiles during their terminal phase of flight. If eventually future iterations of THAAD become capable of swatting down fast and high-flying intercontinental ballistic missiles as they make their final descent towards their targets, such a system may be able to protect key cities on the west coast. But considering North Korea's latest missile, the Hwasong-15, is capable of hitting anywhere in the United States, and its range is likely to only grow greater in the future, deploying some sort of advanced THAAD battery that doesn't even exist now to the west coast would mean the North Koreans would just target somewhere else than against diminutive drones. The bottom line here is that missiles of all types, even the finest the West can produce at any cost, fail for a variety of reasons. These can include manufacturing faults, software glitches, environmental factors, wear and tear, and especially operator error. And in many cases multiple missiles are fired at a single target in hopes of overcoming the odds, but even then there is no guarantee they will work, especially if the malfunction is not in the missile itself. The idea that a missile costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even millions each, and hundreds of millions or even billions to develop, could fail to accomplish its mission in the age of iPhones may sound unbelievable to many. But it isn't a strange phenomenon, although it may be attributed somewhat to the greater trust we place in technology and the assumptions that go along with it. There are some anti-ballistic missile concepts being developed on the dark horizon of defense technology that could add new layers of more effective ballistic missile defense, and thus increase the chances that an enemy missile will be neutralized before it can execute its dastardly deed. These include the possibility of introducing a long-awaited airborne laser capability, albeit in unmanned form, aimed at busting ballistic missiles during their vulnerable boost stage. This is more or less the holy grail of BMD as it doesn't rely on costly interceptors, relies on less infrastructure to work, and it acts as a deterrent in its own way as the missile would fall back down on the country it was launched from. It can also be redeployed with ease. The possibility of a space-based anti-missile layer is also enticing. But these capabilities remain largely conceptual or partially experimental at best, and it will take years to mold them into an operational form, and there is risk that they will never make it to that point at all even after great investment. Considering the finite dollars available for missile defense, competition for bolstering existing capabilities or developing new ones will be intense to say the least. What is important is that the myth of a missile shield gives way to realistic talk about the benefits and shortfalls of the systems that make up such a notion. This is especially important when it comes to policymakers and critical decision-making. In the end, the best missile is the one you never actually have to use. Avoiding conflicts and relying more heavily on diplomacy and strategic compromise, backed by a well-equipped and highly trained military, is a far better solution than a myopic march to war that is backstopped by an extreme reliance on questionable defensive systems that are supposed to keep thousands, or even millions safe from incoming missile barrages. Simply put, it is far easier and cheaper for the enemy to simply build more missiles of advancing capabilities than it is to build an anti-missile architecture to counter all of them. Look how fast North Korea's ballistic missile program has moved along. Within the span of roughly 5 months, The rogue state went from a highly impressive first iteration of an ICBM to one that is far more capable and imposing, and features a huge nose section that could very likely be filled with multiple warheads and decoys in the not-so-distant future. These are things our missile defense system isn't really ready to deal with, and it isn't clear how many more billions of dollars will be required to make defending against a higher-end threat, and especially a more numerous one, a real possibility.